table of death. The food and wine laced with potassium cyanide. And there is this. But 3 bullets and enough poison to kill a dozen men weren't enough to stop the mysterious peasant holy man with the hypnotic eyes, Gregory Rasputin. Before the night was over, there would be song and prayer and unimaginable terror. Our place at this table will be the first stop on our journey into the strange, the bizarre, the unexpected.
Witness a demon dance in New Guinea to learn the secrets of the mudmen of Asaro. Come to grips with the longest fingernails in the world. Discover how earlobes are transformed into symbols of sexual attraction. Join the battle for survival as young birds seek the safety of the sea. Go underwater with a feathered fisherman. Hunt with a giant eagle as it seeks out its prey. Enter into the human body as surgeons use new technology to perform remarkable operations. Witness the astonishing effect of Qigong, an unexplained healing art from China. And see for the first time on television, Judy Garland, Ray Bolger, Burt Lahr, and Jack Haley in the missing musical number from The Wizard of Oz. The strange, the bizarre, the unexpected. These are the kinds of subjects a man named Robert L. Ripley challenged us to.
Believe it or not.
What drives a man to murder? Greed can do it. Fear, jealousy. In 1916, a Russian prince named Yusupov plotted murder to save his country and his Tsar. That at least was his plan. His intended victim, Gregory Yasinovich Rasputin, a peasant holy man with mysterious powers. He used them to win the confidence of the Tsar and Tsarina, convincing them he alone could save the life of their child, a hemophiliac. Rasputin gained an all-pervasive influence in the government, an influence many judged dangerous. Prince Yusupov decided Rasputin had to die. I decided to give a little party for Rasputin here in the basement of my St. Petersburg palace. A private party, away from witnesses. I had the furniture, some very nice pieces, brought down specially. My associates, who helped me arrange the plan, waited upstairs while I myself went to fetch Rasputin by car. We came through this door, directly through the courtyard. We sat and chatted. Then I offered him a tray of cakes, the poisoned cakes, each one with enough potassium cyanide in it to kill several men. He said he wasn't hungry. I pressed them on him. He took one finally and ate it. And then another. Nothing happened. I offered him wine, as thoroughly poisoned as the cakes. This, he accepted eagerly. He gulped it down. Again, nothing happened. By now, he should have been several times dead. And then he seemed to grow drowsy. His head drooped. And then, suddenly, he was fully alert again. This was unbearable. I went upstairs, got a gun from one of the others, and returned, keeping the gun out of sight. I went over to him. Come, look at this, I said. Come, it is very beautiful. And he came. Look at it carefully, I said. You'd better say a prayer before it. He was now standing directly before me. He fell to the ground. The others rushed down from upstairs. Rasputin was dead. We checked very carefully. Then we went to celebrate. Suddenly, a foreboding clutched at me, pulled me back. Here, for one final look. I shook him. I had to be certain. One of his eyes opened, and then the other. He was staring at me with all the hatred of a devil straight from hell. And then his hands went around my throat, strangling me with the strength of sheer terror. I broke away. Stairs. He's alive! He's alive! Rasputin ran out of the basement into the courtyard and then started running toward the street. One of the others shot him twice, brought him down, and then savagely kicked him in the head. I got a club and I used it. I hit him and hit him and hit him until my fingers, I myself collapsed in a dead faint. The others bound Rasputin's hands and feet, took the corpse to the ice-choked river Neva, and threw it from the bridge. So Yusupov, the murderous prince, tells the story. There's a macabre footnote to it. In a letter to the Tsar, Rasputin had actually predicted his own assassination, and he made a further prediction. He said if he were killed by peasants, the Tsar would come to no harm. But if the killers were nobility, then the Tsar would lose everything. Just 2 months and 11 days after the murder, the Russian Revolution exploded into history. The Tsar lost his crown and then his life. Just as Rasputin had predicted. Believe it or not.
Discretion.
A price you can afford.
For reasons which sometimes defy logic, people the world over choose to adorn their bodies in elaborate ways. These remarkable tattoos, fashioned after 18th century woodcuts, give their proud owners a sense of courage, strength, and loyalty. Those who are so adorned consider themselves members of a very exclusive fraternity. We are in the studio of Mr. Shotaro Yamada here in Tokyo.
He's an acknowledged master of his craft, irezumi, an ancient art of tattooing that some say was originally borrowed from China. Mr. Yamada comes from 3 generations of irezumi artists. He works in the traditional manner, puncturing the skin by hand, not by machine. It takes up to 2 years to complete a full body tattoo, and although each of the tens of thousands of punctures are painful, the subject is willing to accept the discomfort in order to obtain his lifetime work of art. However, a tattoo can be more than an adornment. It can also be an investment. There's been at least one instance in which an elaborately decorated gentleman quite literally sold the skin off his back for considerable cash to a museum. Collectible after his death.
Male members of the Crajo Indian tribe in the Tocantins River Valley of Brazil have their ears pierced at the age of 12, but not for simple earrings. The process of enlarging the earlobes will be carried on over a long period of time, stretching them until the young man is able to wear discs, considered a symbol of manhood, a mark of sexual attraction. The larger the disc, the greater the attraction. In Pune, India, Sridhar Chilal is well known in the community as a photographer. However, he is better known for a peculiar personal distinction it has taken most of his life to achieve. Sridhar is now 46 years old. He has not cut or trimmed the fingernails on his left hand for 30 years. The nails average 21 to 30 inches each, placing him in the Guinness Book of Records as the man with the longest fingernails in the world. To earn such an honor, Sridhar has explained, required a stubborn determination. A school teacher once beat him for not cutting his nails. He revolted against authority and hasn't questioned his decision since. As the nails grew and became an object of public curiosity, he came to believe that someday they might be bought by a collector for a great deal of money. Such hasn't been the case, and he no longer expects to make his fortune with them. By now, his family and neighbors pay little attention to the unique appendages which have made most routine functions difficult. At this late date, however, he has no intention of changing his mind. Sridhar plans to specify in his will that his legacy, his fingernails, should be fitted on a cast of his hand and displayed in a museum for posterity. Papua New Guinea. Each year, the villagers in the valley of Asaro recreate an enemy invasion that took place long ago. They play both the enemy and themselves in a story climaxed by a most unusual form of adornment. In the surprise attack, the village would have been wiped out if escape tunnels hadn't been dug in advance. Those who got away took refuge in the marshes. Heavy rain fell. When a tribesman returned to the hideout covered in mud, his friends thought he was a demon and fled from him. This inspired a wise man of the tribe to concoct a plan to retake their village. Carrying on the recreation, the villagers, first having played the enemy, now return to their home as the legendary Mudmen of Asaro. The plan to frighten away their conquerors was successful. The invaders ran from the demons, never to return. The colorful charade is ended. An impressive headdress can command as much attention in New Guinea as it can elsewhere in the world. In the United States, to qualify to plead a case in court, all the law school graduate has to do is pass the bar examination. Here in England, he must, in addition, make a stop in a shop like this. For over 300 years, the proprietors of Ede and Ravenscroft Limited have provided the vital element that gives the English judicial system its distinctive appeal: the wig. There are over 1,200 wigs made in this workroom every year. Now, wigs like these aren't a luxury. They're required by law to be worn in court by judges and barristers. This is an everyday wig for judges, called, appropriately enough, a bench wig. And this one, up here, we have what is called the full-bottomed wig. It isn't for everyday adornment. It is worn by judges, but only on ceremonial occasions. The fashion for wigs began in France over 400 years ago, when Henry III lost his own royal hair and thought it less than regal to display his bald head in court. The fashion caught on, and by the 1600s, a gentleman would not appear in public without his head properly capped in any one of dozens of artificial hairstyles. At one time, the wigs were made from human hair, but not now. The material is harvested from horses, properly sanitized, of course, and dyed in the proper pale color. It does lend one a judicial air. And frankly, a sense of importance. Perhaps that's why at one time those who wore them were called bigwigs. At 600 pounds, almost $1,000, it's an expensive way to protect your pate from scrutiny by the common crowd. On the other hand, a wig is a tax-deductible expense. It is, after all, overhead. Believe it or not.
In the late 19th century, fashionable English women applied their makeup permanently by tattooing their lips, cheeks, and eyebrows. Believe it or not.
What do you get when you make Duncan Hines?
This is Jack, a green-winged macaw. He's a valued member of the family here at the Audubon Zoo in New Orleans. The birds here are free to fly because they can't go too far or get into too much trouble, as this magnificent aviary is enclosed. People have always been fascinated by birds, their beauty, their grace, their ability to soar through the air. Yet scientists have concluded that all birds share a common ancestor, a small dinosaur called Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx was a reptile. He could run and hop, but he wasn't much good at flying. He did, however, possess the one thing that even today all birds possess and no other creatures have. Feathers. It may seem improbable that all these beautiful birds developed from a creature related to snakes and lizards, but look closely at almost any bird. Not at its body, but at its feet, where the feathers leave off and the reptilian scales begin. Today, the descendants of Archaeopteryx, over 8,500 species of birds, inhabit almost every area, every environment of our planet. Don't they, Jack? Ah! Yes, they do. With its 7-foot wingspan, the Philippine eagle dominates the sky above its rainforest home. Second only to the South American harpy, it is the largest bird of prey in the world. The eagle family's food needs are substantial. A flying lemur is spotted some distance away. Despite its formidable appearance, the Philippine eagle is an endangered species. Only 300 to 500 remain. The eaglet's first weeks are spent developing its breast muscles. At 5 months old, while strong enough to fly, it's still insecure and practices what is called branching, testing its own weight against various sized limbs. Not intuitively programmed to fly, it will need some special provocation. In this case, an agitated hornbill frightens it into action. It doesn't know what the hornbill will do, but it knows it's time to leave. Its maiden voyage. Now protected from poachers by law, the Philippine eagle's survival is still a matter of urgency to conservationists. It is June on Frederick Island off British Columbia. Hidden in burrows during gestation, eggs belonging to the family called ancient murrelets now begin to hatch. Once free of the shell, dried off and alert, the chick looks about for its parents. But the parents are out at sea where they will remain, leaving it up to the infant to find its way to them. This is a tale of true determination. The baby murrelet is not only alone and hungry, but has a long journey ahead. Thousands of adults on the water cry out for their chicks. Despite the deafening sound, zoologists believe the baby can distinguish its own parents' calls from all others. As remarkable, perhaps, is the chick's perseverance. Reaching the ocean's edge, the chicks can see their goal for the first time. Their determination becomes even greater. The murrelets leave the water only once a year to breed on land. Finally united with its parents, the chick now becomes a bird of the sea. 8,000 miles to the south, the Pacific coast of Peru is mainly an arid desert region. Normally, such land would have little financial value, but it is also the home for some 30 million cormorants, whose presence directly affects the country's economy. The bird's droppings, called guano, produce what many consider the best natural fertilizer in the world. The 10 million tons deposited here each year provide the Peruvian nation not only with a substantial income, but a constantly renewable one. Why millions upon millions of cormorants would choose to pack themselves together on this particular coastline remains an enigma of nature. Peruvians, however, aren't about to question the phenomenon which has blessed their land since recorded time. Pound for pound, the osprey is one of the strongest birds in the world. Here it collects a heavy 7-foot branch to add to its giant nest. Just arrived from Africa, the ospreys will need the spring and summer in Scotland to rear a family. Food will seldom be a problem for them. Mate and baby need not worry. The osprey is the only bird of prey to feed exclusively on live fish. It spots today's quarry and attacks. The large trout weighs 1.5 pounds. Its captor, only 3. The osprey is equipped, perhaps better than any other bird, to survive in an increasingly hostile world. Believe it or not.
The official name of an Australian bird that mimics other creatures, including a barking dog, is appropriately the male lyrebird. Believe it or not.
You were up at 4. You
We're in a 19th century operating room. Time was, people who found a place down in front here witnessed a very dramatic performance. In those days, operating rooms were called theaters. Medical students and members of the general public packed into this very gallery here at St. Thomas's Hospital, London, to watch the great surgeons perform. This was the kind of operating gown they used. It was rarely cleaned. And this bowl of water was used to wash their hands after the operation. Doctors didn't have anesthetics in those days. No way to kill the pain other than a few stiff drinks. The surgeon had to work quickly, very quickly. Many operations we take for granted, the removal of an appendix, the repair of a heart, were then quite simply impossible. The most common form of surgery then was amputation. A really good surgeon could cut through skin and saw through bone in less than 30 seconds. Often, though, the procedure took an agonizingly long time. No wonder patients had to be well-strapped and forcibly held down by strong assistants. It must have often seemed the cure really was much worse than the disease. A grim era in surgery. But part of mankind's struggle to be free of disease and find the way to perfect health.
The quest has never ceased. Today, a patient with severe stomach bleeding will be treated by a laser beam. Dr. Paul Salmon explains.
Now, all that means is we're going to use a very powerful light. It's about 1,000 times brighter than the sun, in fact. And that energy we're going to transmit down a fiber to burn up these little blood vessels which you've inherited and which are in your stomach and causing the bleeding.
An example of what the laser beam will do. Amazingly, it has no effect on the white stripes, but is turned into scorching heat by the color red, and severe bleeding is the patient's problem. The first stage is to look into the stomach by using a highly refined optical system called an endoscope.
A little uncomfortable just to start with. Well done. Lovely big swallow. Big swallow. That's it. Down it goes. That's fine. Now the fiber, please. Fine.
A miraculous tool, the endoscope will allow the doctor to pinpoint the lesions and determine the precise method to attack them. Now to destroy the lesions by laser without damaging the stomach wall.
Okay, I'm going to put on aiming beam now.
Dr. Salmon fires. Each burst of light cauterizes several of the exposed blood vessels. Soon, all lesions will be permanently sealed.
Well, that lesion I have completely destroyed now.
Okay, it's all over now, Mrs. Mullen.
One of the great virtues of laser treatment is that seldom will there be side or after effects.
Okay.
Another English doctor, Alan Gardner, would discover that his skill at sailing eventually could serve him well as a surgeon. A few years ago, there seemed little he could do to help a patient with an incurable bend in the spine. Christine Skinner's spinal deformity had been worsening for 6 years.
Without immediate attention, she faced confinement to a wheelchair.
This is the spine of a normal person. And this is Mrs. Skinner's spine with this marked angle in that position.
Dr. Gardner had an inspiration. This simple device called a bottle screw, used in sailing to adjust tension in the rigging, might just solve the problem.
The bottle screw fits in the front of the spine in this position, as you can see on the X-ray. And by opening the bottle screw, we can correct the deformity. Mackintosh, please.
Dr. Gardner's imagination has transformed a store-bought item into a potential advance in spinal surgery.
Bottle screw, please, sister.
Made of titanium, his adaptation of the bottle screw is implanted and adjusted to force open the curved spine. 4 months later, Mrs. Skinner is almost recovered. The pain she suffered for so long is completely gone, and she can now resume a normal life. In the shadow of Toronto's skyscrapers, a large Chinese community has prospered for many years. Dr. Chu Chow arrived here recently from Shanghai. Both Western and Chinese medicine are taught there, but Dr. Chow, from boyhood, studied only with the masters of the traditional ancient healing methods. Besides acupuncture, he also practices, in a unique manner, a 4,000-year-old healing art known as Qi Kung. Qi is the energy force the Chinese believe exists in all living creatures, an unseen force that flows through the body like blood. If the flow is blocked, then disease may occur. Dr. Chow claims to be able to transfer his energy to pass his qi to the patient's blocked passages. He believes he is the only practitioner of Qi Kung in North America. By simply taking his patient's pulse, Dr. Chow determines which energy channels need to be cleared up.
Pain, stiffness in the joints, muscle weakness are all the symptoms of the arthritis. I went to see the Western doctor and they prescribed painkiller drugs which make me stomach upset.
According to Dr. Chow, his patients aren't hypnotized, but are responding, each in a different way, to his energy force. Utilizing this unusual, invisible technique in conjunction with acupuncture and herbal medicines, Dr. Chow says he has cured ulcers, arthritis, and other internal illnesses. For Western doctors, it is an amazing assertion, but then many of the medical arts of the Orient continue to mystify the scientific world. Here in Beppu, Japan, they call this steam the dragon's breath. It comes from the inferno of volcanic heat that underlies this entire area. And when that steam is mixed with earth, you get a special kind of mud. They say it's medicinal, that submerging yourself in this hot mud is good for all kinds of aches and pains. It contains a lot of minor minerals, and if you wallow around in here long enough, they say the therapeutic effect is fantastic, that the minerals permeate your skin and get to those hard-to-reach places. The fact is that whether it's good for your health or not, it's kind of fun. And if it is good for your health, it's a lot more pleasant than taking a pill or getting a shot. And besides,
It's the first time I've made a mud pie out of myself. Believe it or not.
To protect themselves during a plague, doctors in 16th century France wore leather noses in which they burned incense. Believe it or not.
What makes you unique?
The Movieland Wax Museum. Although it's 40 miles from Hollywood, the museum is as much a part of that fabled city's heritage as the memories that are evoked here. Jeanette MacDonald, Maurice Chevalier in The Merry Widow. They sure don't make them like that anymore. Old movies are like old songs. They remind you of a time that was, of who you were with, and where you were when you first saw one of your favorite movies. In a way, old movies are old friends. You're always glad to see them again, even if just for a few moments. And here at the Movieland Wax Museum, they're all around us. Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy.
Now we've got to go all the way back to that market and get a steak, thanks to your stupidity.
Well, we haven't got any money left. We spent everything that...
Well, here's another nice mess you've gotten me into.
And of course, these old friends.
I'm afraid there's no denying I'm just a dandelion, a fate I don't deserve. I'd be brave as a blizzard.
I'd be gentle as a lizard. I'd be clever as a gizzard.
If the wizard is a wizard who will serve,
then I'm sure to get a brain, a heart,
a home,
the knave.
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Jack Haley, the Tin Woodman. Ray Bolger, the Scarecrow. Bert Lahr, the Cowardly Lion. And of course, Judy Garland as Dorothy. The stars of one of the best loved and most popular movies ever made, The Wizard of Oz. Yet it's a wonder the film was ever made at all. There were 10 writers, 4 directors, and one of the stars had to be replaced after they had already begun shooting. 1938. The Wizard of Oz had just started rehearsal, but the MGM publicity department was wasting no time. They released this trailer promoting the film and gave us a rare glimpse at the actor who was to play the Tin Woodsman.
Here's the Wizard of Oz set. And who is this? Ray Bolger, who will play the Straw Man. Bert Lahr, who is to be the Cowardly Lion. And Buddy Ebsen, the Tin Man.
For Buddy Ebsen, 4 weeks of rehearsal and 2 weeks of shooting were nearly fatal. He was hospitalized by a severe allergic reaction to the aluminum dust in his makeup. To replace him, the studio cast another song and dance man, Jack Haley, seen here in these remarkable home movies of Harold Arlen, the composer of the film's music. Despite modifications in the makeup, however, Haley suffered a dangerous infection that almost cost him his sight. Injuries and illnesses seemed to be as numerous as changes in the cast. Surprisingly, Ray Bolger was originally signed as the Tin Woodsman. He had to plead with studio executives to switch him to the role of the Scarecrow. The first choice for the Wicked Witch of the West was the glamorous Gail Sondergaard, not character actress Margaret Hamilton. For Hamilton, however, the role was almost a personal disaster. Her green makeup was toxic, and if it hadn't been removed immediately after she'd been badly burned during a stunt, she could have been disfigured for life. Even 16-year-old Judy Garland was not the studio's first choice to play Dorothy Gale of Kansas. The role that would make Judy a star was originally intended for another young leading lady, Shirley Temple. Bert Lahr was everyone's first choice to play the Cowardly Lion, but to him, wearing the 70-pound costume was like walking around inside a mattress. When Lahr, Haley, and Bolger tried to have lunch in the studio commissary, with bits of makeup still sticking to their faces, they looked so disgusting they were asked to leave. From then on, their meals would be served in their dressing rooms. For Bert Lahr and nearly 600 other actors, including over 100 munchkins, the movie was a 6-month ordeal. For MGM, it was a losing proposition. In its first year of release, it fell short by $1 million of recouping its cost. The Wizard of Oz didn't return a profit until 20 years later, after being sold to television. Believe it or not, this Oscar-winning song was cut from the film after the first preview. It slowed down the picture, some executives said, and it was considered unseemly for an MGM star to sing in a barnyard. But good sense finally prevailed, and the number was restored. One number was cut from the film permanently. It occurred just after this scene as Dorothy and her companions enter the haunted forest. 5 weeks were spent shooting the sequence, yet it was sacrificed to shorten the picture. The original footage has long since disappeared. Only the soundtrack remains. However, thanks to Harold Arlen's behind-the-scenes home movies, you are about to see a reconstruction of that number for the very first time. It was called the Jitter Bug.
It's a Hooters. It's a Hooters? It's a Watsons. It's a Watsons? Who's that? Who's there?
Who's that? Who's that? Who's that hiding in the treetop? It's that rascal, the Jitter Bug. Should you catch him buzzing round you, keep away from the Jitter Bug. Oh, the bats and the bees and the breeze and the trees have a terrible, horrible buzz. But the bats and the bees and the breeze and the trees couldn't do what the Jitter Bug does. So be careful of that rascal. Keep away from
the Jitter Bug.
If you ever wondered how the trees of the haunted forest came to life, now you know.
So be careful of that rascal. Keep away from
the Jitter Bug.
The Jitter Bug, the missing number from The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz remains as fresh, as entrancing, as wonderfully sentimental, and as appealing as when it was first shown over 40 years ago. And of all the music and the lyrics and the lines spoken in the film, the one that remains the most memorable is also the simplest. There's no place like home. Right, Toto? Believe it or not.
The Elgin Marbles, 2,500 years old and priceless. Kept here in the British Museum, they originally ornamented the Parthenon in Athens, Greece. They are counted among the most glorious artistic achievements of the ancient world. They also inspired a terrible curse. They are called the Elgin Marbles after Lord Elgin, who had them stripped from the great Greek temple and brought to London. His plan, to use them as decoration for a new home he was building. When the famous poet Lord Byron saw what was being done to the Parthenon, he cursed Elgin. On the head of him who did this deed, my curse shall light.
Well, while Lord Elgin was still about his work, he contracted a horrible skin disease, which ultimately cost him the lower half of his nose. On his way back to England, he was arrested and held prisoner for 3 years by the French. And when he finally did get home, he discovered his wife was having an affair with a neighbor. He promptly canceled plans for the new house, divorced his wife, and learned he was deeply in debt. The expense of dismantling and moving all this had proved crippling. He offered the marbles to the British Museum for £75,000. They offered 35. He finally accepted, and then, because the money wasn't enough to cover his debts, he fled the country. Lord Elgin never laid eyes on the marbles again. All this beauty had brought him nothing
but the curse of a great poet, and it cost him his fortune, his wife, and even his nose. Believe it or not.
Classic toys never die. They just keep on killing. Chucky's back, the innocent doll with the soul of a madman. He's got some all-new games to play with your life, and he doesn't like to lose. It's Child's Play 2, as 4 nights of dangerous toys begins tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. Now, it's back-to-back episodes of Dark Shadows. Sci-Fi Channel next.